Yeah, so I thought I'd spend a minute at the beginning of this meeting just talking a little bit about what we're trying to do here. So Storm really believes in helping small business out. Many of our 1,000 customers in the commercial space are small businesses, and of course we have 9,000 residential businesses. Residential customers. So we have a lot of customers, and we're looking at how do we help people come back from the pandemic stronger? What can we do to help? And part of that, we decided that we could put together a series of talks that would help people understand a little bit about what the new landscape seems to look like. So as an example, a number of our customers have actually gone ahead and gone and converted some of their business to online. We've got some people that have gone ahead and looked at how to automate some things inside their business. So we're working on all those kinds of things to try and help customers do what they need to do. And part of doing that is we're bringing in expertise from outside. So as an example, we're bringing in Doug Feltmate today, and Doug comes from a background, very extensive background in the food service industry. I probably should let Doug talk himself, but basically he's done everything from the Hyatt front and back of house around the world to a bunch of work in the food services side of the world, where he's done institutional food, and his fun place to work is working on what goes on at St. Martha's Brasserie out in New Orleans, and we were having a conversation about a year ago. And Doug told me that one of the things that he'd noticed is that more and more things were internet connected. So we started a conversation around that, and we really wanted to see what we could do about getting that doing. And so this is the conversation. It's a conversation with Doug. It's here to let Doug talk a little bit about what he's doing. And we do have a series of these that we're thinking of, and we think there may be some opportunity to have some other people in the restaurant industry follow up on this. So Rebecca Happy, who invited some of you here, is here online, and we appreciate all the help she's given us. So thank you, Rebecca. And here we are with Doug.
Thank you. Yeah, my background is as a food service hospitality consultant. I've been doing it since 1977. Oh, that seems so long ago. And I ended up doing about 1,800 projects in 35 countries around the world, and some of the major hotel chains in South America, Central America, the Middle East, Europe, Asia, all over the place. So in my retirement, which I've tried to slow down with now, my hobby is actually running the restaurant. I don't actually run it, but I'm involved with it. And it's St. Martha's Brasserie. And how this all changed was, and I'm going back about 5 years, is more and more things started to have connectivity in the hospitality sector. And obviously in a large hotel or a project like that, it was much more extensive. But then I started finding out, when we back out just into a simple little restaurant, mine is a 40-seat restaurant. And when we looked at all the various things that had to be connected, and you don't think of it when everybody's planning to open a restaurant, and that's kind of my bailiwick is the design, functional programming, engineering, and then implementation of the program and building it. We very rarely, had data connections. For example, we'd obviously have one for the point of sale system and one for the payment system, and that was the old way of doing things. Then things started to change, and as you know, everything became cloud-based, and there was so much going into the cloud. So if we go back pre-COVID, and we're essentially going back 2 years, and Birgit, you would probably acknowledge, how often technology changes in a 2-year time.
Massively, all the time.
It's massive. And now, for example, in our little restaurant, and I went through and did a little check, we have 14 connection points that require connectivity to the internet. And of those 14, I could have 50 to 75 people or things connecting to it at any given time. So how you prepare and engineer your building and plan for it, it's not a complicated thing, but it's kind of tough to do afterwards when you find out you can't make reservations, your payment system is crashing on you all the time, your point of sale system, because all these things are wireless devices now that work within your infrastructure of a restaurant. So if we go back and down to it is the old, the standard point of sale and the payment system. There's the kitchen printer. There's a kitchen display unit. If you have electronic menu boards, those are connected. You have phones. You have the office computer. You have the reservation system. You have the alarm system. You have security cameras. Now in post-COVID is a big part of it is you're constantly doing contact tracing and signing in with your vaccination certificates.
You guys did a nice job on the QR codes and making it easy for people to sign in and get on board. And then pop the menu up right after because somebody integrated the script very nicely.
Right.
It took away a friction point and made it easier for your staff so they didn't have to hover over people while they keyed things in.
Right. And that was that we did quite a while ago, actually. We got that right away. Now, what's changing a little bit? So you have the general customer Wi-Fi too, because everybody walks in. What's the first thing they say? Is there Wi-Fi here? Because everybody, especially at lunch, people are there on a working lunch. They have to check in emails. And so you have to provide a Wi-Fi service. In our particular restaurant, and we're a little more high tech than the average one. Our cooking equipment is connected. So it's running constant diagnostics, and it's also what we call connected cooking. We can set up programs, we can set up menus, we can set up all that within the equipment, how we cook things, how we do things. So they have to be connected. Also, our ventilation system is connected. And it's, again, as an energy saving piece, it actually monitors everything and varies the speed of the exhaust and makeup air and HVAC systems. So all that is monitored. So that will become the norm. In our place, it's probably a little advanced, but in the next year or so, that will become the norm in all places. You'll be connected everywhere, and everything's going to be, there'll be a Wi-Fi connection for everything. In our case, we try and do hard connections as much as possible, whenever possible. Yeah. So that's
something important that you said. You said something important when we were chatting about the hood and how because of the hood plus some connected equipment which can reconfigure its stovetop, you actually can save quite a bit of energy and foot space along the way. So there we go.
Yeah, what we're doing, and I think the number that kind of shocked you was when I said for every 1.5 foot of exhaust hood that a restaurant has is equal to a ton of air conditioning, of heating and cooling.
Yeah, that's the one.
And a ton, just to put it into perspective, 1.5 tons will heat and cool an 1,800 square foot house. So for every 1.5 foot of hood that you can reduce, you're going to drop that energy cost. So what we've done is we do a lot more multitasking high-tech equipment that can do different things at different times, and it shrinks down the hood. And then on top of that, you have what's called demand ventilation, and it only ramps up the exhaust fans when demand is needed. So what that means is, even though you've shrunk the hood that much and you're using that much less heating and cooling, you've also, if you look at it, you're also reducing energy consumption another 40% just on demand. Restaurants will turn the hood on, and it'll just be on. It'll turn on in the morning, turn off at night, and it doesn't come on depending on, it runs at full speed all the time, and that's the way probably 80% of them are. And so you're wasting considerable amounts of energy. So those are the things that are going to slowly take over and become the norm. There's certain code things that require it now. So any new construction, there's going to be those requirements involved. So those are some of the points that I look at, and why this was critical to me is I wanted to find somebody, and that's where we partnered with Storm, is how do we set up that infrastructure within the business at the outset and during the construction phase? Because you don't want to do it on a Friday night when you're your busiest and you overload your system and all of a sudden your payment system goes down. That is not a nice feeling. Or you're having to run chits into the kitchen manually because that's not down. And that was the case we had quite often, actually, in the previous system. And after I sat down with Storm and I said, let's get in the right equipment. And it's not a costly thing to do. It's just, let's do it right off the bat and not after the fact. Not when you're open for a week and go, you got some residential style router sitting in there that's you can't divide and you can't partition it off as to where certain data has to go and how do you clean it up. So maybe Bert, you could talk just briefly to that sort of thing that we have to look after.
Yeah, so from a Storm point of view, there's a couple of things. First of all, we monitor the whole network, so we actually know it's down before you do, which is kind of a handy thing if you're running a restaurant. So my only venture into restaurants was a disaster, just so you know. It didn't work out that well. But I learned a lot doing it. And the big thing, I guess, is that when we came in to give a hand, Doug had said, "Hey, can I get an enterprise grade Wi-Fi system in the restaurant?" And we had one of our techs go out and look at it, look at the equipment he's trying to use. Because you got cameras on this, you've got your cache, which is really in the cloud. You've got your scheduling system, you've got your menu, you've got I presume
alarm,
your back office stuff with payroll and all that. So you have all those things all connected through the cloud. And one of the things is the enterprise grade really showed truly, because you can actually do things where you split what's used by the restaurant and what's used by the customers into two different, what's called a VLAN or virtual local area network. And so we're able to provide that kind of degree of change in your business, so it's not all on the same router. The second thing is we gave you a professional grade thing that, as it turned out, worked out really well. From what I understand, as you put the tent in the parking lot, you're able to take orders from right from the parking lot, and in addition to that, you're able to do the work that you needed to do to be able to bring the Moneris machine out and let people pay for it. So all of that became possible because you could do it. Plus, of course, back end for the QR codes, and both for signing in for contact tracing, but also for the menus. All of that helped your staff not have to burden themselves too much with the check-in process. I haven't seen it since they just did the codes for the province of Ontario, but I would imagine that'll even be easier now than us having to show ID and match it with our driver's license.
Yeah, the difference now is each one of our servers has to use their smartphone, which has a reading app on it.
Yep.
And then so the person coming in shows their QR code, and then our server has to read it. So that means now all our servers are connected all the time because they've got to read it. Right. And just to speak of the monitoring process, it's ironic that you brought that up, because we were closed yesterday because I was upgrading some equipment, and in doing so, I had to upgrade the entire electrical panel and change it and pull it down. Well, 5 minutes into our shutdown, I got a call from your office, and it says, we can't seem to get you're down, and we can't seem to get you up. What's wrong? And I said, well, I'm sorry, I didn't call you and tell you, but yeah, we're going to be down till 5 o'clock tonight with no power. So the router, you can't read anything that you're on your monitoring. So that's proof that it was being looked after.
Yeah. The other piece is that maybe we should be chatting with you about the other piece, which is UPSs. Have you got any of your equipment on UPSs? I know there's a battery in the tablet you're using for your cash, but what about the other equipment? Does it need UPSs, or have you got them?
Our key things are the payment system and the tablet, and they both have. They don't have UPS, but they have battery. They're all on battery backup, so they'll work for several hours without power. Okay. But if we're essentially out of business if we lose power.
Right.
Because we lose our hoods, we lose our, some of the cooking equipment, that sort of thing. I think there's questions. Did I see questions pop up? I don't know if I can. Yeah,
there's a question here that says, this is for you, Doug. You mentioned that getting this set up as part of the construction process. What set Storm apart as a company chosen for the construction of St. Martha's Brasserie?
The honest truth is I wanted to talk to a person, and I didn't want to talk to somebody 8,000 miles away to set up my system. And I wanted bodies and people and local customer service that I could pick up the phone and call them and get support and help me out. And if somebody, if we had an issue, somebody could come down and look at it. I've dealt with Bell and I've dealt with Rogers, just to throw names out, but it's not an easy thing to get support afterwards. The first thing is you spend an hour and a half or 2 hours on hold, and then everything would go, follow from there. So that was the real concern. I mean, it's funny, as a restaurant, we try and buy local, we use local beers, we use local wines, we use local foods. And we take it a bit further. Our trades that we try and involve in the process are all local as well. And we're community-based that way. So that would be the main reason.
Well, we appreciate the business and glad we could actually get things going for you that way. Rebecca has a question for you, which is, you mentioned that getting this set up as part of the construction. What do existing restaurants do years after the construction is over? Are they always stuck piecing things together?
Not at all, Rebecca, because my change and my involvement with Storm came after we were open for 3 or 4 years. And I just had too many failures when it came to IT issues. We would lose, before we got a good enterprise solution, we would lose connectivity all the time. And it was a nightmare for staff. A Friday night, I'd lose our payment system and it would go down for an hour. And you can't call one of the other providers at that time because something was happening with whether it be the modem, the router, or something like that. So it's not an easy thing. I mean, we did, Storm came in and did the retrofit and everything in a morning. So it wasn't even a lost business day.
Rebecca, did that get your question answered? Okay. All right. Yes. Thank you. Okay. So there you are. She's happy with the answer there. Yeah. So I think the main thing that you and I have chatted about is the role of IoT in the hospitality business, and whether it's institutional food or whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's an event, and just for people who might not know, Storm has been in the event business for many years. Last couple of years, we've lost about $300,000 in business for the event business, because we normally do Blues Fest We provide the backbone for Blues Fest wirelessly. So their stage, their lights and sound people down to the stage. It's all about us. We do their gates. We do their ticket booths, the beer tent, the merch tent, and even the trailers for the rock stars. Or I guess sometimes they're not rock, but anyway, and we also do Folk Fest. We do Hope Volleyball. There's a lot of places where we do some conference and help the event come together, because you name an event where it's not handy to have Wi-Fi. And if you've ever rented the Aberdeen Center, when you want the Wi-Fi turned on, you end up working with a Storm person who turns it on for you, and customize your SSID so it says Rebecca's Happy Place, and then after that we can customize the password you want to go with it, and it'll turn on Wednesday at 5 p.m. and turn off on Friday at midnight. And so we can actually have that all automated so that that's all done for you. And we own the equipment. We invested in putting the equipment in and had a contract with the government of Ottawa, the municipality of Ottawa, to provide that in the Aberdeen Center. We've also done a lot of inside meeting space Wi-Fi, both on a temporary event business basis, but also for doing Wi-Fi with the with meeting spaces like 111 Sussex. Where we've actually done the design for multiple access points that wouldn't conflict with each other. So a big thing about there's too many access points these days, and they often conflict with their neighbors. So we've done a lot of work to make sure that we can actually move the channel they're on out of the way of the local channels. We actually have some new radios coming out this quarter that will actually allow people from our knock to peer into the radio and see what the neighbors have, and turn around and say, oh, well, everybody's on channel 11 and on channel 6, so let's get you out of that and put you on another channel. So we can actually remotely reorganize things for you, which is going to be handy. But in terms of IoT, one of the things that you're going to want is monitoring the freezer, but allowing for somebody to open the door, go in, get stuff, and come back out. So that kind of stuff's coming, and I'm sure for most restaurants. I know that people are concerned about something getting too hot or too cold in a lot of different places in the restaurant too.
Right. I think that to take it a step further, one of my big involvements right now is in the healthcare sector, and for the last 4 years now, I've been a big part of revamping the long-term care food service program and turning it into an a la carte system. The old days of, a beef option, a chicken option, and maybe a fish on Friday or something like that. Those days are fortunately going to be in our rearview mirror as soon as we get going with these new programs. We've got several pilot projects going right now in the province. I've got about 14 going. We're doing one very large 600-bed facility in Toronto right now, and another 350-bed in Hamilton. And where that's going to be a little bit different, and this is going back to food service, is the technology now allows us to the dietary worker can go to the table when somebody's sitting down. They use facial recognition software to bring up the person, so they know all the dietary restrictions as soon as they open the tablet with the person. They take the food order. That food order is then sent to the pantry kitchen, and they prepare the plate. And within 15 minutes, it's made from scratch, and it comes out. So that is going on throughout the dining room. And that's going to be a real interesting thing, and it's all linked together. And so that you're going to see things like that happen, because that can't happen without technology.
And so you mean to say this is the end of that oxymoron, hospital food?
Well, there's always going to be people that will, the biggest problem we have is change management.
Right.
And if people have done hospital food for 25 years, it's really hard for me to get them out of that mold and into what other food service mold. And just to answer your question, Rebecca, it doesn't cost us any more to do. Believe it or not. We're still working on the same daily restrictions for daily costs for residences in long-term care. And we're doing it in an a la carte mode with the food quality being a lot better.
Yeah, and you're doing a lot of work these days in private companies, helping them with their cafeterias and commissaries and things like that.
Yes, it's been quiet the last couple of years, but we've got Canaxis coming on board pretty soon. We've got the new CMHC facility coming on board next spring. It's under reconstruction now, but technology will play a big part in that because there's no such thing as a cashier anymore. And the way it's going to be set up is people will order from a pod style pedestal out in a common area where they can order their food, pay for it, and then they're told when to pick it up. Kind of like how you see at McDonald's nowadays, except you can do that from the pod, you can do it from your desktop, you can do it from your phone. So there's no cash transaction that takes place. So that's Canaxis is going to be that way. We've done 2 new projects at Ottawa U that are that way now. So there is a lot of that happening, and where we take cash out of play. And again, that can't be done without technology. So you have to make sure that you have capacity in the technology before you start implementing those systems.
Right. Yeah. So our team specializes in taking a look at a space and deciding how to do the access point engineering so that we can decide and then understanding the devices that will be connected. Plus, in this case, the guest LAN, how many, you've got 40 people, how many of them will be on at a given time? You're supposed to be paying attention to the person across the table from you. But anyway, there's a lot of things that you have to make accommodations for because it's going to happen. And you're right. The first thing people say when they get to a restaurant is, "What's the Wi-Fi password?" So that's all there.
And the other thing is right off the bat, they say, well, we have internet service to the restaurant. It's so much more than that now. Anybody can bring a pipe to a business. Right. It's how you handle that in the business itself, and how you're able to connect to it.
Yeah. So so the value added services are the design. That's a big one. Knowing how to design this on top of the network. It's no longer just a pipe. It's a matter of how do you connect everything? How do you integrate it? We're doing a lot of integration work from Storm these days with a variety of things, all the way from construction sites through smart farms, and restaurants are somewhere in the middle. So,
hello, Brad. Good to see you.
Brad's mic's off, but that's okay. So yeah, there's lots of things for people to think about when they're either designing or retrofitting a restaurant. Certainly, when you're trying to come back from a pandemic and you're trying to build your restaurant back up, and some of these techniques and some of these pieces that you can integrate in are going to reduce your costs and give better service, less friction points with bringing your diners in and helping them through the process of getting their meal.
I think you raise a good point there, because when you introduce technology, and people in the restaurant business, Rebecca, you've probably heard a lot from a lot of the people that you're associated with, the staff just are not coming back, and they won't be coming back. They've gone off and done other things, and there's a major shortfall in staffing in the food service industry right now. So part of the game is now, how do you figure out how to do things? You have to be able to do more things with less resources. So that means doing it with some technology. We just put in a piece of equipment yesterday, and people will look at us and go, "You're absolutely nuts." because it's one piece of equipment. It was $36,000, but it saves one full-time equivalent. And currently right now, that's $45,000 a year. And so our basic cooking, so a cooking staff member before COVID, just a basic line cook, was $16 an hour. They're now $22 an hour. So that's a big percentage jump. So if you're at $22 an hour, that's $44,000 a year. So our return on that investment is 10 months. And then it starts to be beneficial right after that. And it also puts out better quality. It just puts out better quality food because you're monitoring things so much closer. From a food safety point of view, that's always been critical in our business. And certainly that was my experience with Brad in the past, is you're always concerned about food safety and how you cook and how you prepare. So you have to monitor your food, how you store it, how it's handled, how it's cooked, how it's in the hazardous zone temperatures. And that's critical in our thought process. And in an enterprise type of solution, when I do hotels and larger projects like that, that is paramount. You need creative food, but it has to be safe.
Right. So is this one of those devices that cuts down the amount of hood you need?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It does 3 or 4 jobs now that, basically we had to have other equipment in place to do it. It's on our, it's just an amazing piece, and we're kind of lucky to give it a go. It's probably only the second one in Canada right now, second or third.
Yeah, well, that's great. I mean, it gives you a place to go and try things out to see what restaurants that you're designing or retrofitting it would fit into.
Well, that was the purpose of opening St. Martha's originally. St. Martha's business model in the kitchen and how it was designed from an efficiency point of view and a technology point of view was done for the Hyatt Regency chain that we were doing several locations in the Middle East at the time. And what it is it was meant to be a kitchen for the room service at night, so they could shut down the main kitchen for the production time. So in large hotels like that, the main kitchen becomes a 24/7 operation, and you cannot clean it properly. You can't turn it over. So we wanted to build this little satellite kitchen that would handle 40 or 50 covers overnight, so they could knock down the main kitchen and clean it.
Right.
And that was the model. And I, when I built it, I used it in about 3 or 4 of the Hyatt projects. And I went, geez, this would make a neat thing in Orleans, because I happen to live there.
There you go. So how do you see all of the internet connectivity evolving? So if we were 5 years from now and I walked into St. Martha's, what would be going on that's different than it is today?
I think we're just going to add nodes. We're going to add more things to what is monitored and connected and controlled from outside sources. We're going to be in the process of monitoring our power distribution and how we use electricity.
Yeah.
Lighting is going to be a big thing. We've already got HVAC on control. We've got all that. Let me just hang up on this person. Oh, that was one of your support people, Burkett.
Okay.
So I think that's what we're going to see is, and post-COVID, I mean, the contact tracing and that sort of thing isn't going away real soon.
No, I think we're stuck with this for a while. It'll just be different variants of the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the good thing is we've learned how to deal with it. There was all kinds of panic at the outset, but everybody's learned how to deal with it. And like any crisis situation, and that was a crisis. I mean, we closed for 4 months at the beginning, didn't know what to do. So we, rather than run around with our head cut off, we just closed the doors and we said, okay, let's figure this out.
Yeah. Well, Storm owns a network. And so we actually, because of everybody working from home and learning from home, we actually have had to do more than 100 upgrade points in our network to be able to improve network traffic to people. We actually do monitor the whole network all the time. And one of the things that happens with it is we automatically go through the process of putting people on putting a node on a watch list if we start bumping up against the 85% on that node, and then it gets, if it keeps being up in the 85% range, we start upgrading that. Gets on the upgrade list and it gets done pretty quick.
Right.
We actually buy our internet service because nobody can get it unless they're deal with Bell Rogers TELUS, because they own 87% of the entire internet in Canada. So they do sell us fibers along with Zayo and a couple other suppliers. So we do buy fibers from many different places, but then all of the monitoring and support is done by the Stormfront. And so we actually have the opportunity to monitor carefully what's going on, which of course, if you're in the restaurant business and your stuff does go down, you don't want the surprise, because you need to know it's going to be back up by the time you open. If there was any issue with it at all. Plus, we can help people. We can help them planning. So if they are going to change what they're doing and they want to consult with our folks, we have a very talented group of people that will walk them through. Here's where we think you might want to make the changes in order to support it better. So there's a lot of that going on as well. Our mission is to try and help small and medium businesses grow, and we think everybody needs to be able to take advantage of the internet, and they probably don't need to deal with the big guys, because we're a local small company, and one of our slogans is rediscover customer service. And we say that for a reason, and real work, real people. So if you've been watching our blog at storm.ca/blog, you'll actually know that we're doing a bunch of stuff, including connecting people with fiber to the home in the countryside. We're doing some large tower projects where in one case we'll actually have two 200-foot towers which tower over top of the 560 homes, and we're going to be able to provide those homes with things. But we also know that there's some restaurants in that area that want to get better connected because they're on 5.1 DSL, which would make Doug wince. And then the other thing is that there's businesses in the area, including farms, and we've done over 150 smart farms where we actually integrate the feeders and the milkers, put cameras up in the barn, connect the house, connect the kids' houses across the road, and make a private network for that whole farm group. So they're actually then connected to be able to do the things they need to do. So those are it's innovation on top of just providing a network feed and understanding what people want. And we've done quite a bit of work on this, and we're now building playbooks so that our team can actually sit with you and go over, these are the kinds of things we can do for your kind of business, whether it's restaurant business or automotive business of one kind or another, or whether it's construction. We're in 8 of the construction sites for, here's the thing for you, to do an automatic Uber to the construction sites. But we're feeding construction sites with their 8 of the new LRT sites with their connectivity. Comes directly from Storm, usually wireless, because they're only going to be there in theory for 6 months. So they don't want to build a permanent structure. And we can bring gigabit speeds into a construction area on a point-to-point basis. And we own a lot of assets, vertical or rent vertical assets. We own or rent vertical assets all over the area. So we're able to do all those things. So that's part of what we can deliver. And so when you go to do an outside event someplace, it's quite possible we may be able to flood the area with Wi-Fi for you. So when we do the things at Blues Fest, as an example, we own an antenna spot on top of Tower C right downtown, and then we also own Summit City Center, so we can actually use that to beam it over to the field outside the War Museum. but you can think of what else could I reach if I was on top of Tower C, and the answer is a long way. So we're able to do that kind of thing. We've done some work in Brockville hired us to do the Main Street, so the Main Street's all Wi-Fi. Same thing with we won an RFP to do the pieces in Barrie, so we've done Barrie, Ontario. We're doing some experimental work with the York Regional Transit, where we're actually delivering mobile internet to the buses on a non-cellular basis, using a thing called TV Whitespace. So it's technology that allows us to meet their need, because they didn't want to use cellular on the buses and pay for the cellular bills. And we've also done all of the handoff points at the various subway stations for them. So it's an experiment, it's proof of concept. Once the pandemic is over, I think that I said we'll put permanent licensing in place for that, and we'll be able to expand that network anywhere where there's a bus. So that would be kind of interesting. We certainly have had a chat with the city about some of the things we can do and are doing, and I'm thinking that the city of Ottawa might actually buy local one day. So those are among the things. And anything else on the restaurant front?
Is there any questions or
Rebecca? Rebecca, you can unmute yourself and have a chat with us.
I don't have questions, but I think that like some of what you said is really interesting and probably very pertinent for people. If you say that what you guys are doing at St. Martha's in terms of technology, and it's coming tomorrow in the next 5 years, then that's something for proactive business builders to want to pay attention to. It's all new information to me.
We're also for the people who did register, we're going to get them a checklist that talks to a little bit about things you might want to think about for your restaurant if you're planning on doing this kind of thing.
It's interesting you say that, because so much has changed in the last 2 years. When I'm planning and designing an operation, it used to be about the equipment, and you'd make sure you got the right power to it, the right gas to it. Now it's now we're looking at data points always on equipment and how things are going to be used within the business. And that's not just restaurants, that's all of food service. And it's no different than how offices have evolved. Used to be there was wires all over the place. I did a renovation in my house. I have every room wired with RJ45.
Right.
And I have two things connected to it now.
What happens, when that if you have all your gear and all your payment things and everything, and there is like everything falls apart, right? Because of some kind of disaster, or the net goes down. What is there, like a plan B for people to manually do things like the old-fashioned way, or is it always you're just totally hooked into the web?
Well, no, what you can do is you can work internally if you lose your outside access for some reason. So the most important thing for a restaurant owner is you've got 30 bills open, and how can you close them off?
Yeah.
So the point of sale system can still close off a bill. The key is what I've done with my Moneris system is I have 4G capability on the Moneris system. So getting the payment through is the critical thing in a restaurant. So I could lose full connectivity, power goes down, and my Moneris terminals will still function, and I can still collect the payment. And so that's the big fallback position.
Okay. But you were talking also like a while back about, your whole infrastructure of your venting system, your heating, like all the different devices that are hooked into needing Wi-Fi or internet connection, or like even the temperature, all if that's what's coming down the road. People have smart homes now, right? And I'm not skeptical, but it's like, well, what happens when you're not connected? You're crippled.
No, I should correct that. Is you don't need those. You need power, obviously.
Yeah.
But in terms of your connectivity, everything still functions without connectivity.
Okay, cool.
You just can't monitor things. You still can't control it. You can't input parameters. You can't do all the monitoring things, but
Okay.
they still continue to function
Okay.
in a default mode.
Okay.
Because
And to Doug's point, there are things you can do. So he's worked specifically on the Moneris to make sure there's a SIM card in it and a battery to make sure it can call home to mom. But we actually do offer failovers devices at Storm. So one of the things we can do is if somebody is concerned about that happening, then we can actually build in an additional layer so that there is a failover that wouldn't be affected by the main net. Brad, do you have a couple things you want to say? Because you could actually unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I was clicking on the wrong icon. No, I just, I guess I was thinking of automation in, we run a large catering operation. So it's like a big restaurant, if you will. We do about 30,000 meals a day. So it's not quite a large manufacturing plant, but it's a lot bigger than a kitchen. So automation is important to us. And we're just now looking at ways of automating our delivery process to take our meals straight to our customers and understanding where the trucks are on the road and things like that. But we also want to have a look at what's happening inside the factory as well. And we're just at the beginning, Doug, of that whole adventure of looking to automate. We're at a point where we're ready to scale up volume. And whereas it hasn't been economical to date, it'll certainly be economical going forward to automate as much of our processes and gather as much data as we can. So it's been good to learn how you've built St. Martha's on a St. Martha scale, and would love to chat separately or even offline, Doug, with how to take it bigger.
Well, as you know, Brad, we also did the House of Commons production kitchen that way. So it's about a 18,000 square foot production kitchen, and it is completely online because it supplies all the food for the entire parliamentary precinct. And it's the kitchen is actually on Algoma off Saint Laurent Boulevard that provides everything for the parliamentary, everything along Wellington Street. And we actually trace it. We have what we call a cradle to grave tracing system. So things are monitored and coded when they come in the receiving door, and they are that same batch control is monitored right through to the point of sale. So it's even in transport. So it goes in the trucks and it's heated or it's cold. There's actually little nodes that sit in the food. What they are is just a little plastic piece, and they have it's about the size of a watch battery, and it sits in the food, and it takes a temperature reading every 15 seconds. And when you receive it at the other end, you literally just scan it, and it will tell you what's in that pan, and if there was an issue with the temperature monitoring during its transportation phase, and it will even notify you of the corrective action.
Wow.
So, and that's 10 years ago. So,
so that's very similar to what our needs are right now, Doug. So great.
So that was kind of interesting because a lot of that technology did not exist when I started the project with them. And working with the vendors and some people in Silicon Valley, and they were able to develop the hardware. But how you monitor it is something that a firm like Storm would be great in handling, and how we would do all that once the hardware is in place.
Okay.
Because we had to write interfaces. That was part of it, is you had to write some interfaces from some equipment into the, it monitors the dishwasher. So it will tell you if the dishwasher doesn't have proper 180 degree water and what batch didn't measure up. So you redo it.
Wow.
So one of the people that Rebecca mentioned to me was a fellow by the name of Max Brayton. He works in a company called CPAWS, and they actually provide payment services. But one of the things that they had going was the ability to allow you to have your own delivery services, and therefore you pay 3% to have that delivery module as part of your suite of things that you have on your website. Thought that was quite interesting, and probably there'll be a number of people that aren't in love with perhaps Uber Eats and Skip the Dishes, especially if they could find a local driver that might want to do it for them. And that way people can actually manage to make that happen.
Yeah, there's some local companies that are doing it outside of the parameters of the big three or big four.
Yep.
iDeliver does it for RestoZone, yeah. At much lower commission rates. We, while we were closed, interior dining was closed, we had to revamp our entire menu just for pickup, because our regular food just doesn't transport well.
Exactly.
It just doesn't work. So we had to change it for that period of time. But now we don't do delivery or takeout or anything like that. So, we'll do the odd thing, but we're not based on delivery. But I think a lot of food service outlet, I won't necessarily call them restaurants, have pivoted to that's what they want to do. They want to do takeout. They want to do delivery. So getting that system in place is important to do right now.
Yep. Lots of things going on. And part of it is to also have that discussion about how do you scale? Because if you're planning on, let's say you're planning on moving from a certain size restaurant to another size, what do you have to do to be able to scale? And I think that becomes part of the discussion as well. I've had this conversation with a couple of different people, but one of them was Joelle Parenteau, who runs Wolf Down, which is a Berlin Dornier she's off Bank Street. Her partner is the a member of the Shopify team, and so she learned a lot about how do you actually grow your business, and so growing the business. She got that all down to cloud-based, and now she's opening her second restaurant. And we had she came from the tech business, which is how I knew her. And so we got into a conversation about scaling and how you actually can scale a business. And she's decided to see if she could franchise some stuff in the US, starting by making sure people know about her in Las Vegas, and then see how many people come forward and say, I'd like Berlin Dorniers in my city. So she's hoping that will work. And we did talk about, what does it take to go from one restaurant to 2 to 5?
Scaling is the perfect thing for the restaurant business. And that's how I typically plan and do everything. And right down to the fact is, how many seats can a server handle? How many full-time equivalents do you need in the kitchen? And you design the whole thing and the operation to meet that scalable solution, because there's a space optimization that comes into play for that scalable solution. So that's an important part. But a good example of a big scalable solution is the Shaw Center. When I did the Shaw Center, we did that for 5,500 meals per day. But it's scalable units of 350, right up to 5,500. So we just implement, if you're doing an event for 700, it's 2 units, and so on and so forth. And they have 22 different locations within the building that there could be a catering function within. But scaling absolutely in the food service business is the best way to do things.
So Doug, thank you for being so generous with your time. Rebecca, thank you for supporting us and making sure a few people were aware of us. If there's no more questions, we'll just thank Doug for his time, and we're right at the very end. And Brad, thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Great talk.
Thank you.
And we'll see if there's a need to come back and do another one of these for the restaurant industry. I think there might be something where we could get a panel together with maybe Rebecca, and maybe we grab Max for the payment stuff, and we just put something together where there's 3 or 4 people just chatting about things that would make things better. Because we need to support all these local folks. Thanks again for everybody, and
Thanks, Burkett.
Yep, and we'll hopefully we'll continue this series. We'll cycle through and be back at restaurants in a couple of months, and more people can think about more ideas.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Doug.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.